2022. All of humanity suddenly lost their sight. No one knew why. But 2 years later, I regained my vision. On the surrounding wall, and scrawled across the floor, was a single sentence. Don't tell them you can see. Entry, Day 1. The content above comes from a diary I found in a remote camping cabin. The diary is unsettling. The words look as if they were printed. And the entries are entirely about a global catastrophe of blindness. But in this world, such a disaster never actually happened. It is now January 2024. How could I possibly be unaware of what happened to the world 2 years ago? So, I continued to read the diary. A month has passed since my sight returned. I still haven't figured out where these words come from, or where this place is. This isn't my city. Everyone's clothes are marked with paint, featuring strange, cryptic these patterns. Clothes were salvaged by them during their escape. Found along the road of ruin and distributed. I don't know what's happening. I don't know how much longer I can keep this secret. What will happen if I'm exposed? I can only scribble a few lines in the diary when no one is watching. Is there anyone else who can see? Entry, Day 31. A few days after reading that part of the diary, not far from where I discovered it, I found a tattered vest buried in the soil. On it was a red bird, possessing the face of a human, like a totem from some ancient, primitive tribe. Perhaps the diary was referring to this. I'm deeply confused. Why would this diary be printed? If it's a work of fiction, why did this vest actually appear? I'm starting to feel afraid. I decided to head for home the next day. That night, after packing, I continued to flip through the diary. I thought everyone survived by huddling together, helping one another through the darkness. But that's not the case. Someone must be helping us. I should have realized that a group of blind people couldn't possibly survive in this forest alone. Entry, Day 54. There are others who can see. Thank God they haven't noticed us. But I've discovered there really are others in the forest. It's bizarre. Before, I was only focused on how the disaster began, and didn't notice these details. Entry, Day 87. So that's what a bird is. So that's what a person is. A terrifying winter. God, please let me live. Entry, Day 100. We are migrating. Entry, riverbank, massive paint, mountain peaks, valley floor, cave. Entry, Day. The back of the diary is filled with simple sketches. They are also printed. I suspect they are maps of some kind. The final entry of the diary was a long, frantic paragraph written without pause. As expected, it's better to remain blind. In blindness, there is no danger. Sight only invites calamity. I've figured out where the words come from. The one who wrote this is truly clever. And just as foolish as I am. Anyway, I'm out. I'm a good person. I'm going home. I just bought a new refrigerator. It's perfect for storing mice. That way I can raise snakes. I'll have a talk with my wife. She'd probably agree. I'm going home. This has nothing to do with me anymore. I threw it away. These people look at me with total confusion. What do they even mean? I can't wrap my head around it. And I don't want to know. The next morning, I cycled back along the return path. The journey was uneventful, but as I traveled, something suddenly clicked. To my left was a dense forest. Trees towered into the heavens. To the right was a karst landscape. Bare, jagged rocks stood like sentinels. This is exactly like the descriptions in the diary. But fortunately, the cave mentioned in the diary never appeared. I comforted myself with that thought. Toward evening, I reached a bridge. This meant I was close to the main road. But I soon noticed a silhouette on the bridge. That figure stood on the bridge for a brief moment, then suddenly leapt off and vanished. Pure terror seized me at that instant. I bolted. Guided by raw instinct, I scrambled toward the end of the bridge in the dark, but for some reason, the moonlight grew dimmer. My world was fading to black. As I ran, I realized something was wrong. The bridge wasn't that long. Why hadn't I reached the end after 5 minutes? In the darkness, I could only grope blindly. Suddenly, I touched something hard and icy. A stone wall, a massive stone wall, was right beside me, and a freezing draft blew against my face. It felt like a cave. My legs buckled with fear. I collapsed onto the ground. Can you see? A woman's voice suddenly echoed from behind. I froze. I was about to answer, but then I remembered that warning. Don't tell them you can see. My gut told me not to speak the truth. No, I can't see. You really can't see? I really can't see, no. We are just like you. Blind since the world went dark. If you have nowhere to go, you can come with us. It wasn't until she led me to their camp that I realized the light hadn't vanished. I had actually gone completely blind. Was this the camp from the diary? But it didn't seem to match that horrifying atmosphere. That night, the woman approached me again. She spoke in a deliberate whisper. Actually, you only lost your sight recently. Don't be afraid. Didn't you? I'm not a bad person. This time, I didn't lie, because I truly was blind. It seems you really can't see. Otherwise, things would have been difficult. I was baffled. I summoned the courage to ask, "Wouldn't it be better to have someone who can see? Why are you so wary of it?" The woman shook her head. She told me a story. Once, there were those who regained their sight, but they kept it hidden. Eventually, they betrayed us. At first, they were secretive, as if they had been replaced. Then, people started disappearing. Finally, in that bitter winter, the sighted ones stole all the supplies and vanished without a word. To this day, we don't know why. Since then, we never trust anyone who can see. Is winter here very harsh? Not really. For some reason, there are plenty of animals to hunt in this forest, so we don't lack food or warmth. It's just that every winter, people go missing. No one knows why. And every winter, a peculiar cry echoes through the forest. It's incredibly loud. You don't hear it in any other season. Maybe it's some kind of migratory bird, but it doesn't really affect our lives. After living there for a few months, I became fully accustomed to the camp. It was actually quite ordinary, just a group of refugees. They worked together in perfect harmony, and had even built several small huts. Despite the security, I couldn't find peace. Was I really going to stay here forever? Then, winter arrived. The first of those strange bird cries rang out. My sight suddenly returned. It was snowing. I was in the forest, chopping wood. When I first saw my surroundings clearly, a primal fear washed over me. I could see clearly on the tree trunks, on the ground, and even on my own axe. Words written in red paint of all sizes. Don't tell them you can see. But that wasn't the most horrifying thing. I saw, perched on distant trees, giant, dark birds sitting in rows. Each was as tall as a man. And they had human faces. They stood solemnly amidst the falling snow, watching us work. My skin crawled with terror. Could these be the birds mentioned in the diary? Birds that only appear in winter? Could the people who vanished in winter be? I didn't dare finish that thought. Terrified they'd notice, I squeezed my eyes shut. I realized that perhaps the sighted ones fled because they saw this. But why? Didn't they tell the others? I returned to camp, my heart pounding with dread. During dinner that evening, I chatted with the camp leader. We've lived here so long. Why haven't we tried going back to the city? Maybe things have returned to normal there. The moment I spoke, the entire area fell into a heavy silence. I felt the shift in the air. I squinted my eyes to steal a glance at everyone. Their faces were masks of either terror or grief. The leader finally spoke. Actually, there's no harm in telling you. At first, we thought exactly like you. We felt we had to find a way out. But no matter which way we turned, the forest became more treacherous. Tigers and leopards were everywhere. Once, we lost over 10 people. After that, we gave up on the idea. At least we can eat our fill here, can't we? I was deeply troubled. The cave should be right by the bridge. My path here had been perfectly smooth. Where were these beasts? And the diary's owner seemed to have escaped. Right, the cave. The diary noted the cave's location. It seemed I had to find it. The next day, while working, I slipped away while everyone was distracted. Riverbank, painted peaks, valley floor. The cave. The camp was built on high ground by the river. I followed the river downstream. The terrain began to drop. Then, my fears were realized. The further I moved from the camp, the more human-faced birds I saw. At first there were only a few, but soon they were perched on every bare branch. I noticed that for the most part, they were deathly still. Unmoving. But whenever something moved, their faces would slowly swivel toward it. Like some kind of surveillance system. Are these creatures really just animals? They seemed to possess a human-like intelligence. Just as I was pondering all of this, one of the giant birds stretched its neck and let out a piercing cry. I trembled. I stopped and watched. An impossible sight unfolded. The trees before me came alive. Their branches writhed like worms. They even slowly shifted their positions. Their roots and limbs wove together into a massive barrier, blocking my path. All of this happened in absolute silence. If I hadn't regained my sight, I would never have known. As I stood there in shock, the sounds of wild beasts echoed from the forest. Growls of tigers, cries of hawks, and monkeys. I scanned the area. There was absolutely nothing there. Where was the sound coming from? I focused on a giant bird, a few dozen meters away. Its beak was wide open, and the sound seemed to emanate from its throat. I looked at the other birds. They all had their mouths open, tilting their heads, forming different shapes with their maws. They were mimicking predators to drive me back. So this was the obstacle the people from the camp had faced. No wonder the blind could never leave. Suddenly, I remembered the leader's words. Tigers and leopards were everywhere. Once, we lost over 10 people. My heart sank. Would they attack if I kept moving forward? I immediately turned and fled back to camp. During dinner, my mind raced with one thought: how to bypass these monstrosities. Then I remembered the woman. She knew about me. She was the only one who had come from the direction of the cave. How did she make it through? I had to find her. The woman lived alone in a small hut, right in the center of the camp. The others had built it for her out of gratitude. It was said she was one of the leaders who first guided them here. But when I reached her room, I saw something that chilled me to the bone. Sat a pitch black, colossal bird, and that bird had a face exactly like hers. What on earth is going on?